You're probably not recovering from burnout, you're just getting better at operating inside it. And I know that sounds rude, but if you've been telling yourself, I'm doing better because you're functioning again, because you're not crying every single day, because you're setting some boundaries, I need you to hear something. Functioning is not the same thing as getting better. Here's what tipped me off that you might be in this. You take a few days off. You feel a little human again. You come back and you swear that you're going to do it differently this time. You make it what? Maybe a week, maybe two, if you're lucky. Then the dread comes back. The irritability comes back. You start procrastinating on tasks that used to be easy. You stop answering your texts. You're exhausted, but you can't sleep like a normal person. That loop is the tell. Hey, if you're new here, I'm Tara. I'm a burnout and career coach, and I help high achieving people figure out what the F is actually happening at work and then make good choices about what to do next. Today, I want to give you a way to tell the difference between burnout recovery and burnout management. Because if you mix them up, you will keep working the wrong problem. The reason this matters starts with how we've been taught to think about burnout. Most people treat it like a low battery problem. You're tired, so you recharge, you get back to work, and that model makes sense if your problem is that you're depleted. But it does not make sense once you understand what burnout actually is. The World Health Organization does not classify burnout as a mental health condition. They classify it as an occupational phenomenon. That's not just semantics. It means the primary driver is the job, not your psychology. It means the container is the problem, and you are responding to that container the way any normal person would. Here's what happens when you apply a recharge model to an occupational problem. You rest, you come back, the conditions are still there, the demands still outpace the resources, the manager dynamic hasn't changed, the workload math still doesn't add up. You get depleted again. And so you need to recharge again. You're basically doing the career version of putting a bucket under a leaking ceiling and telling yourself that that bucket has repaired the issue. The bucket matters. I'm not saying that coping strategies are stupid. They keep you afloat. But if all you ever do is the bucket, you are signing up to live under that leak forever. And here's the part that really gets people. Research distinguishes between two types of burnout. One is circumstantial, meaning it's driven by a specific situation, a brutal quarter, a bad project, or an understaffed team. Now, when that situation changes, the burnout can actually self-resolve. The other is existential burnout. That one's driven by identity and values. It's the burnout that happens when the work has stopped meaning anything, when your sense of self is tangled up in performance, when you don't recognize what kind of person you want to be at work anymore. That one does not self-resolve. It requires a different kind of intervention entirely. And most people doing burnout recovery have no idea which type they're actually dealing with. So let's get into this some more. I want to give you a quick way to check which lane you're actually in. So take any burnout recovery thing that you're doing right now. Time off, better sleep, exercise, therapy, setting boundaries, saying no more often, that beloved morning routine, really anything. And I want you to ask two questions. Question one. Does this reduce symptoms or does it change the source? Reducing symptoms means you feel better in the short term, but nothing about the work structure or your relationship to it has changed. You get enough relief to go back in. Changing the source means something structural shifts. The drain slows down. The problem gets smaller, not just quieter. Let's think about this from a different lens. Last year, I tore my meniscus, and I did what you do when you tear your meniscus. Painkillers, crutches, a brace, physical therapy. Basically, I managed the pain well enough to move throughout my day, well enough to look semi-functional, and well enough that I could almost convince myself it was getting better. But it wasn't getting any better. The tear was still there, and the only thing that actually fixed it was surgery to repair the tissue. The rest was symptom management. It was necessary symptom management because I couldn't just sit down for 6 months waiting for surgery, but it wasn't recovery. It was tolerance. That's coping with burnout. The painkillers essentially are your morning routine. The crutches are the boundaries you've set. The brace is the PTO you take. All of it is helping you get through the day, but none of it is repairing the underlying damage. So here's the work version of that. You come back from PTO, the workload's still there, the manager dynamic's still there, the culture that rewards being available 24 hours a day has not changed. The burnout was caused by an imbalance between what the job demands and what the job gives back. PTO doesn't change that ratio. You just had a week where you didn't feel it as much. That's why people feel like shit again by Wednesday of their first week back. Not because the vacation didn't work, but because it was never designed to fix what they came back to. Now, question two, does this strategy only work when everything around you stays still? Because here's the thing about coping strategies. They tend to have a very specific operating environment. They work when you have a predictable week, when nothing urgent dropped Friday afternoon, when you didn't have to stay late or have that hard conversation, or didn't have to deal with a surprise on top of an already full plate. Think about the last time that you felt genuinely okay. And I mean really okay, not just not terrible. I'd guess one of two things was true. Either you were on vacation and you had actual distance from the job, or everything at work was calm, manageable, and nobody needed anything unexpected from you. That's the tell, because life doesn't stay calm. Work doesn't stay manageable, and every time something tips out of the controlled zone, the burnout comes back at the same level it was before. The strategies didn't reduce it. They just required conditions that can't hold. Real stability is going to hold up under pressure. Not every single pressure and not forever, but it doesn't completely collapse the moment your calendar gets complicated. And this is where the systemic piece matters. So in 2020, about half of employees said their organization genuinely cared about their well-being. By 2024, that number dropped to just 21%, 1 in 5. So we're in a moment now where nearly 4 in 5 workers are basically on their own, managing a structural problem with personal tools. The wellness apps, the mental health days, the resilience training, all of it is designed to help individuals cope with what is primarily a conditions problem. And that's not accidental. Organizations benefit from you believing that the burnout is yours to fix. And it's exactly why the strategies feel so insufficient. You're doing everything right and still ending up in the same place because the thing that you're trying to fix isn't the thing that you're actually addressing. So what actually fixes it? What does changing the source look like? This is where people get stuck because the default assumption is that it's still personal. Better habits, better mindset, better time management. And sometimes those things do genuinely help, but a lot of burnout is not coming from the fact that you have a weak boundary muscle. It's coming from the fact that your job has a built-in problem that none of your habits are touching. When I work with clients, I use a framework called the 5 Cs to figure out where the source actually lives. You see, burnout almost always has a primary driver, and if you don't identify it, you will keep applying solutions to the wrong thing. So let's go through them one by one, and as I do, I want you to notice which one makes you pay attention. The first is conditions. This is the structural setup of the job itself. Workload, role clarity, whether you have the resources to actually do what's being asked of you, your level of autonomy, the pace, the staffing. Basically, when you zoom out and you look at the math of the job, does it hold up? The research on this is pretty consistent. When the demands of a job consistently outpace the resources provided to do it, burnout is not just a possibility, it's a trajectory. If your conditions are the problem, no amount of better sleep is going to close that gap. Second is culture, the environment you're operating in. What gets rewarded? What gets tolerated? What people are actually afraid to say out loud? You can have a workload that's technically manageable and still burn out in a culture that makes every interaction feel unsafe, every mistake feel catastrophic, and every boundary feel like a complete risk to your entire career. Culture is what happens between the lines of the job description. And it's one of the hardest drivers to name because it's ambient. It's everywhere and it's nowhere at the same time, and most people don't realize how much energy they're spending just trying to navigate it. Third is convictions. This one's inside you. It's the beliefs that you carry about work, about your worth, or about what happens if you stop over-delivering. Stuff like, if I'm not exceeding expectations, I'm failing. Or if I need help, I'm not good enough. Or rest has to be earned. These beliefs are often the reason two people can be in the exact same job with the exact same conditions, and one burns out significantly faster. The conditions create the pressure, but the convictions determine how much of it you absorb without pushing back. And they're sneaky too. They don't feel like beliefs. They feel like standards or like a good work ethic. They feel like who you are to your core. And that's exactly what makes them so hard to see and so effective at keeping you in the cycle. Fourth is choices, the behaviors that have built up over time. Saying yes when you want to say no. Checking your phone late at night because that silence feels like you're falling behind. Or absorbing tasks that aren't yours because it's much easier than having the hard conversation. These aren't flaws in your character. They're often a logical response to a culture that punishes the alternative, but they still accelerate the drain. And they're one of the few places where you do have some agency right now, even if the conditions and culture haven't changed yet. And fifth is capacity, your actual current bandwidth, not your ideal and not your historical capability, but what you have available right now today in this season of your life. And this shifts constantly in ways that your job rarely accounts for. A hard personal situation, a health thing, a phase of life that's just demanding more of you outside of work. All of it's drawing from the same well. And burnout research is pretty clear on what happens when you keep drawing from a well that doesn't have time to refill. Aflac's 2025 workforce report found that burnout has hit a 6-year high, with nearly 3/4 of U.S. employees reporting moderate to very high stress at work. And NAMI's most recent data shows 1 in 4 employees has considered quitting because of the mental health impact of their job. Most of those people are trying hard. They're doing all the right things. The problem is that they're running the wrong diagnostic, which is exactly the point. If your primary driver is conditions and you spend all your energy on convictions work, you will still be burned out. The job is still broken. If your driver is convictions and you leave for a new job without examining those beliefs, you will burn out there too, and possibly faster because now you have the added pressure of proving that the move was worth it. This is why just take care of yourself makes people want to scream. They are taking care of themselves. They're doing every reasonable thing available to them, and they're ending up in the same place because the thing they're treating isn't the thing that's actually causing the problem. Now, if you've made it this far and you recognize yourself in any of this, do me a favor and drop a comment. Tell me which C hit the hardest. Was it conditions? Was it culture, convictions, choices, or capacity? Seeing where people are landing helps me make better content for you. And here's where I want to leave you. The goal of this video was never to make you feel worse about what you've been doing. Your morning routine, the PTO that you're taking, the therapy you're going to, none of that is wrong. It has kept you functional, and that certainly matters. The goal was to help you see what it was doing and what it wasn't, because that distinction is everything. The person who understands the difference stops wasting energy on solutions that were never designed to fix their actual problem. They start asking better questions. They start making different decisions. And that's the beginning of something that actually sticks. Now, if you want to go deeper on this, I have a free burnout drivers mini assessment that's linked in the description below. It's a short diagnostic that'll help you figure out which of the 5 C's is your primary driver specifically. Not burnout in general, but your burnout DNA. That's the thing worth knowing. And if this video helped you see something that you hadn't seen before, be sure to subscribe. I make this kind of content regularly, and there's a lot more coming on what recovery actually looks like once you've made the right diagnosis. I'll see you in the next one.